One weekend of Premier League football that was. Liverpool go top of the table. Aston Villa continue with their impressive home form. Is a title challenge on for Unai Emery's side. Chelsea once again in the mud. Manchester United again in the mud, despite obviously seemingly bouncing back against Chelsea obviously in midweek. Tottenham are back to winning ways. Manchester City are back to winning ways. There were wins for bottom of the table in the likes of Burnley and Sheffield United. Massive games affecting the entirety of the Premier League table. This has been an absolute madness this weekend, especially when you consider the whole bottom of the table stuff. And of course, this is the video where we're going to be talking mostly about it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. Another weekend of Premier League football has been and gone, and what an incredible weekend it was. Like I say, plenty to dive into, plenty to talk about in this video in terms of all the games that have been and gone. Goals galore for Fulham. They've managed to find their shooting boots from seemingly nowhere in the past few games. Like I say, Liverpool are top of the table. Everton absolutely smashed Chelsea. Tottenham are back to winning ways of a win against Newcastle. City are back to winning ways with a win against Luton. Arsenal losing to Aston Villa in what was going to be the biggest game of this round of fixtures, in my opinion. Liverpool beating Crystal Palace. Man United losing 3-0 to Bournemouth. Sheffield United and Burnley picking up wins. Massive. And of course, Wolves and Nottingham Forest drawing 1-1. A result that seemingly, unless I've missed it, seemingly has seen Steve Cooper keep his job at Forest for another week at least. Yeah. He's got a job. So I don't know if that was obviously something that went underneath the radar a little bit, but he seems to have kept his job for at least another week at least. We're going to be talking all about these kind of stories and everything that's going on for the Premier League right now. We're up to match day 16, I believe. 16, 17, 16. We're up to match day 16. 17 is fast approaching, of course, next weekend. Heading closer and closer to that midway point of the season. The busy festive period, of course, is upon us. So it's only right that we start talking about the Premier League for what it is and for how it's taking shape. Before we go any further, though, we'd like to remind you, please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things are always incredibly greatly appreciated, as well as leaving your thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it in the chat. Do get involved with me here today, people. Would love to hear from you all on this matter. On any matters that I'm going to be talking about, or any matters that you want to talk about. Maybe you've got some of your own talking points you'd like to throw into the mix, into the conversation as well. Would love to hear from you all. But without further ado, let's get on with the video. Let's get on with the live stream. Let's get on with talking about this weekend's Premier League action. And we're going to have to start off with the new Premier League leaders, Liverpool. I don't want to dive too much into the Liverpool story because obviously I did a lot in my match reaction about it. My biggest takeaway from it was the real annoyance from fans in regards to the sending off of Jordan Ayew. That was my biggest takeaway from it. Look, as a Liverpool fan, I'm going to obviously look at the positives more. I'm going to obviously look at Liverpool being top of the league. I'm going to look at obviously Liverpool winning the game. I'm going to look at Liverpool not being at their best and still managing to grind out a victory. But there's no doubt in my mind and in anybody else's mind that Liverpool's victory was given a massive boost and a massive helping hand by the way that Jordan Ayew got sent off. And a lot of people said it was harsh, it was unfair, it was a game-changing moment. The only part I agree with is that, yes, it was a game-changing moment. If that had been the other way round, if that had been a Liverpool player that had cost Crystal Palace the game, I can guarantee you, if that had been a Liverpool player that cost Liverpool the game and Crystal Palace have gone on to win, I can guarantee you that the narrative wouldn't be, Oh, Palace got very unlucky there. Oh, Palace got um, unfortunately shafted by the referee. I don't understand why he's giving a red card. No one was expecting it. Yes, no one was expecting the red card, I don't think. But at the same time, you can give the argument that he should have been sent off, and rightfully so. But if it had been a Liverpool player, those arguments would not have been in any way, shape, or form imposed on the conversation. Instead, what you would have got was, well, he already picked up a silly yellow card beforehand. He's picked up another daft yellow card. He's rightfully gone, and he's stupidly cost his team the game. But because it was an underdog in Crystal Palace, because this was a Palace side that no one was really expecting them to win, and because they were in a position where they were going to win until that red card happened, the narrative is, let's all feel sorry for Palace. Let's all feel sorry for a team that played very well for 75 minutes, but then ultimately had one very bad mistake throw the game away completely. Why should the narrative change just because you go from beating the favourite to being the underdog? That's my biggest takeaway from it. And that was what I couldn't honestly believe was the narrative from the likes of TNT Sport, who, of course, were the ones that were putting on the game. They were the ones that obviously had that game and were presenting it. So that was the narrative from them. And a lot of other fans are on social media and things like that, and a lot of other pundits and things were constantly saying how they feel sorry for Palace, they feel hard done by, and so on and so forth. Yes, I will say again, it was somewhat fortunate. No one was really expecting Liverpool to go on and win that game with 11v11. The red card certainly helped them out a lot because obviously with the way the game was playing. And the red card did seem harsh because for the two yellow cards he picked up, the first one, okay, you can maybe argue that Van Dijk is looking to get him booked, but he does try and stop the game. He does try and stop a quick free kick from being taken place beforehand. And ultimately, Van Dijk just gets annoyed and frustrated with him that he just kicks the ball at him and gets him a yellow card. It's a daft yellow card to pick up. It's a harsh yellow card to pick up. I understand. But at the same time, it's a yellow card nonetheless. And the trip is a trip. It's a blatant trip. It's a cynical foul. It was a stupid thing to do when you're already on a yellow card. And Ayew himself knows it because he didn't try and argue with the referee. He didn't try and argue that he shouldn't have been booked. So you know he was in the wrong. He knows he was in the wrong. So you therefore should know he was in the wrong. That's all I'm going to say on the Jordan Ayew thing. It's just madness to me that he got looked at as the unfortunate person in that scenario. He wasn't unfortunate at all. He made two stupid decisions. He got punished for them. The referee was right to do so because we complain time and time again that a referee doesn't send off a player when he really should, in the sort of hope that he can keep 11v11, even though we know that if a player needs to go, they need to go. We've said that time and time again, but because it was a Crystal Palace player, because Palace were winning at that point, and because obviously Palace were the underdogs in that game and in that scenario, suddenly we should feel sorry for the fact that a referee actually did his job for once. How many times have you seen it where a referee hasn't sent off a player in that situation? Numerous times. I can say it happens with Liverpool as well. I can say it happens with every other team up and down the Premier League table. It happens from time to time, and we should just accept it when it does happen. As harsh as it seemingly may be, as unfortunate as seemingly it may be, he still gave the referee a choice to make. And often that choice is not taken. But when it is taken, we suddenly criticize it because it was the underdog who got hard done by. No, the underdog got hard done by because the underdog was stupid enough to obviously do the thing that they did. That's all. But I digress anyway. Yeah, that was my biggest takeaway from it. And then it kind of goes into what I was going to talk about with the Aston Villa Arsenal story with the penalty decision, because the penalty decision is the exact same thing that Arsenal versus Aston Villa had with, I think it was Kai Havertz going down under a challenge. Same sort of challenge. I think this one was actually worse because this one was more in the air. Same sort of challenge, same sort of scenario, and yet Palace get given the penalty and Arsenal don't. I said in my match reaction that I felt the penalty was the right call. I don't necessarily agree with how they got there after just under 2 minutes of checking whether it was a penalty or not. But I agree the penalty should have been given. I agree that the penalty should have been given again in the Arsenal game, but it wasn't. It's mad when it's like a week apart, but it's even worse when it's on the same day. Because from a 12:30 game to a 5:30 game, you've got to imagine that those referees have actually watched the Liverpool Palace game, seen that penalty was given, and then should know that if a similar incident is to happen, a penalty should be given then, right? I'm baffled by it. But I'll talk more about that a little bit afterwards. The fact of the matter is that Palace fought hard. They did very well. And ultimately, they were undone by one man and one man only. And it's not the referee. It is by Jordan Ayew, who stupidly got himself sent off. I feel like if Ayew had stayed on the pitch, if he'd have substituted him out for someone else, Liverpool did not look like in any way, shape or form they were going to get back into that game because of just how poor they were going forward. And I think maybe a draw at best was probably going to be Liverpool's outcome in that game if it had stayed 11v11. I don't think they were going to go on to win, but obviously with the way that the game went in the end, Harvey Elliott proving to be the match winner, the little diamond, the diamond boy, absolutely beautiful human being. I'm happy. I'm not exactly happy with the performance. Not exactly happy with the way that Liverpool went about their business in this game. We had to ride our luck a little bit. 2 phenomenal saves by Alisson Becker. But at the same time, we got the job done by hook or by crook. And like I keep saying, that is how you get the job done. That is how you grind out results. And that's what obviously this time of the year in the Premier League season is all about, in terms of obviously getting the job done. 3 points on the board. And then it obviously put pressure on Arsenal later on in the day, and they couldn't beat Aston Villa to regain their position at the top of the table, which means Liverpool stay there going into match day 17 of the new season, where they will face Manchester United, of course, Sunday afternoon viewing. Won't give too much away for my predictions, but I'm extremely confident going into that game. I'm sure that confidence will somewhat diminish a little bit as the game goes on, because doubt starts to creep in my mind, just because that's the kind of person I am, that, maybe this is the one day United turn up. Maybe the referees are going to be against us again, and they're going to help Manchester United towards what would be a phenomenal and very unlikely victory. Something along them lines. I'm terrified of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, extremely confident going into that game, as you would expect and as you would hope. But we really should be getting the job done. We really should be getting the job done by any means necessary. And fingers crossed for a high-scoring game heavily in Liverpool's favour, of course, in which we absolutely demolish and humiliate them. I think the beauty about this week is that United have a massive game against Bayern Munich to contend with in the Champions League, in which their Champions League and maybe even Europa League hopes are riding highly on that game. They need to obviously beat Bayern Munich to get any hope of qualifying to actually qualify for any of those two competitions, whether it's to qualify to the knockout stage of the Champions League or whether it's to actually beat Bayern Munich. Hope that the Copenhagen Galatasaray result goes in their favour as well, to obviously qualify for one of those two competitions, whether it's the fallout of the Champions League and into the Europa League, or whether it is to actually go through to the knockout stage of the Champions League. It hangs by a thread. So they'll obviously have to be very competitive in that game. Liverpool don't have to be competitive in their Europa League game. They've already qualified. So that obviously plays into Liverpool's hands a little bit more. And I cannot wait for Sunday. Cannot wait for Sunday next week, or in 6 days' time, should I say, when Liverpool take on Manchester United, I believe at Anfield. Massive game there. Cannot wait. Hoping that we absolutely demolish them. Absolutely embarrass them again. Another 7-0 maybe. Maybe we could even look to break that record. Either way, it would be extremely fun to watch. But yeah, Liverpool going to matchday 17, top of the table. Arsenal, unfortunately for them, could not regain that position after suffering a 1-0 loss at the hands of Aston Villa. I don't think the performance was too bad from Arsenal in all things considered. I just think they didn't take their chances when they came to them. Aston Villa was solid. They weren't at their best with Villa on the day, but they were still solid enough and managed to get the early goal through John McGinn and managed to hold on from there. They had a couple of chances and opportunities themselves, but they couldn't ultimately make them pay. But Aston Villa got the job done. There was an element of controversy, of course. A penalty decision that I already alluded to earlier was more of a penalty than the handball one. The handball that led to the Arsenal goal at the end, which was chalked off for handball. They should have had a penalty, Arsenal. I said that before, I'll say it again. They should have had a penalty for Arsenal. I don't understand how that is not a penalty, especially when that same incident was given as a penalty in the Liverpool Crystal Palace game. So that was strange to me. Like I say, the goal that Kai Havertz scored in the dying embers of the game should have stood. Well, it's hard to tell with those ones because McAllister got a goal ruled out in the Europa League for something similar, but that was further away. This one was actually on the goal line. So do you judge it on the proximity of how far away the ball is from the goal? Do you judge it just basically handball is handball? Because if it hits a defender's hand in that situation, it's given as maybe accidental and it's not necessarily handball. But if it hits an attacking player's hand in any sort of way in the build-up to a goal, that's given as automatically handball. So there is a difference in whether you're defending or whether you're attacking in terms of the handball rule for if a goal is to be scored. For me, I think the right decision was necessarily made. It was so crazy and pinball-y and so awkward to see from the different angles that were shown that, it was so awkward. Like I say, I think Arsenal were hard done by VAR in terms of no penalty given for the Kai Havertz foul, and for the handball. You can maybe argue that the right decision was made there. Again, it's somewhat 50-50 in my opinion, given the fact that it was hit or miss, and we never quite got conclusive enough evidence, at least in my opinion, to see whether it was a goal or not. Don't get me wrong, I'm extremely happy about the result because obviously it means that Liverpool go top of the table. But at the same time, VAR really screwed Arsenal there, in my opinion. I don't understand how you cannot give that as a penalty. I know it shouldn't be the be-all and end-all. Arsenal did miss a lot of chances. Arsenal did ride their luck at times. And obviously, I've said it time and time again with Arsenal, the fact that, they find this mentality to dig deep in games and obviously and get late goals, late equalizers, late winners, whatever the case may be. But that's not sustainable. And that luck will run out eventually, and it did in this game. And I've said it about Liverpool as well. They can't keep going behind in games and trying to find late equalizers and late winners as they have done so often this season. But yeah, Arsenal's luck got found out in this game. They were unfortunate with VAR and by the referee, but at the same time, eventually your luck will run out. Does this mean that Arsenal's title challenge will crumble? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I've seen a few people say that this will be the part where they crumble. I don't honestly believe that because in a couple of weeks' time, Liverpool and Arsenal face each other. All it takes is for Arsenal to get a good result against this Liverpool side, and it is certainly possible because this Liverpool side can be blown out of the water if they're not careful. As difficult and as dangerous as what Liverpool are, Arsenal are also incredibly dangerous and difficult to contend with. So that one's going to make for an absolutely cracking game in a couple of weeks' time that I cannot wait for. And then saying that, as the game ticks down and as the days count down, I will be a little bit worried. But at the same time, I'm very much interested to see what the case may be there and how those two sides will contend with their current positions. Will Arsenal bounce back in the next Premier League game? I can't remember who they've got. I want to say Everton, but I'm not sure. I want to say Everton. I'm going to have a look, actually. I want to say Everton, but I'm not 100% sure. Brighton. I was nowhere near in terms of geographical location. Yeah, Arsenal against Brighton. That's going to be a tough game. That's going to be a tough game for Arsenal. We know how tough Brighton can be. In saying that, they did lose this past weekend to Sheffield United, I believe. Oh, no, Burnley. They did lose to Burnley this week. Oh, Drew won to Burnley. Sorry, I didn't really... I was kind of a bit hammered on Saturday, so I forgot that Brighton managed to get an equaliser. But Brighton is still going to be tough opposition for most teams. Brighton is still going to be tough, especially for the big teams as well, and especially for a team like Arsenal. I feel like Brighton may be able to exploit an Arsenal side that are not going to sit deep. They're not going to sit back against them. They're going to try and come out and play attacking football, and they've got obviously all the right in the world and all the ability in the world to do that. Brighton, it may be good for them to obviously come against a side that's going to try and come out and play some football, so it could actually benefit Brighton as well, but either way, it's going to be a very good game to watch. For your Sunday afternoon viewing. I thought it was going to be Saturday night, but it's actually Sunday afternoon. So yeah, very interested in that one. It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, Aston Villa, Arsenal back to the drawing board. But as for Aston Villa, it is 3 points on the board for them. They are in exceptional form, particularly at home, of course. 15 games in the Premier League, on the bounce, unbeaten, winning. It's been phenomenal. And Unai Emery and Aston Villa deserve all the praise in the world for what has been an incredible run. And for them currently, after 16 games, being on 35 points, 11 wins, 2 draws, and 3 losses, 35 goals scored, 20 goals conceded, sitting in 3rd place, a point behind Arsenal, 2 points behind the league leaders of Liverpool. Could a title race genuinely be on the cards for Unai Emery's side? Now, I've said time and time again, like, I love what Unai Emery's done at Aston Villa. I think he deserves huge credit and huge praise for everything that he's done. I think their away form needs to be tidied up a little bit before we can start really considering them as title contenders. But there's no doubt in my mind that with the way that this season is going, with how crazy this season is, it wouldn't be far out the realms of possibility for a title challenge by Aston Villa, a Leicester-like season by Aston Villa. Would that be out the realms of possibility this season? Let me know what you think in the comments in regards to that, because I, for one, am umming and ahhing about it. I, for one, am 50-50ing it. I can see it happening in some weird, brilliantly mad season. I could see it happening. But at the same time, I think the later the season goes on, will the same level of intensity, will the same level of tenacity be there by this Villa squad? Will they focus on other areas? Maybe they put all their eggs in the Europa Conference League basket and guarantee themselves a trophy, because I imagine they're going to be big players in that competition as it drives forward. Will they put their eggs in like a Europa League basket? Maybe they go after like an FA Cup or something. Maybe they focus mainly on the top four rather than a Premier League, and maybe they try and shore up Champions League football for next season. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And I'm very much intrigued by this whole Unai Emery Aston Villa project, because there's so many things to look at with this. And I'm loving it. I'm loving seeing an underdog and a different team get the praise and the plaudits that they deserve for what has been an incredible season so far. I mean, within the space of 4 days, they've managed to beat both Manchester City and Arsenal. That is incredible. Both at home, granted, but even so, 2 very difficult tasks that they've managed to overcome. And that is why they're currently sat third in the table, only 2 points off of top spot. And I, for one, I like watching Aston Villa. I think there are some issues there that need to be shored up, particularly away from home. It's going to be interesting to see the level of intensity, whether or not they can handle some injuries that are going to be inevitable in any season. I'm just intrigued to know what is going to happen with Aston Villa going forward. Do I think that there could be a title challenge? Look, we're 16 games into the new season. They are third, 2 points off the table. I'm starting to believe that maybe there could be some sort of Leicester season in the works here. But in saying that, I also see massive obstacles for Aston Villa to overcome, huge pressure to ride and to obviously overcome. And I don't personally see it yet, but there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that a top 4 challenge is certainly looking more and more likely by the week. A top 4 challenge, as well as maybe a trophy come the end of the season, is looking very possible for Unai Emery and for Aston Villa. And let's face it as well, this is a manager who has plenty of European pedigree when it comes to European competitions. So why not? Why not do this? I'm just having a look at Aston Villa's Europa League standings. Top of the table on 12 points, 4 wins from possible 5, only lost 1. And going into the final match day, so they've pretty much they've qualified, I think. Yeah, they've qualified. Yeah, they've qualified. They're going to be massive players in that competition, massive team in that competition going forward, likely to win it. And of course, with the manager that they have at their disposal, of course, like I say, he has plenty of European pedigree and plenty of European experience in regards to this competition, with what he's managed to achieve at not only Sevilla but also at Villarreal, of course. And for me, I would love it if Aston Villa won it, for one reason and one reason only: to really annoy Arsenal fans of their former manager going abroad to Spain, winning the Europa League, and then coming back to this country with Aston Villa and winning them the league. That would be incredible, in my opinion. It would be something that I would love to see. Not obviously love to see more than my own team winning the Premier League, but if my team for whatever reason couldn't win it, and I don't necessarily still think we are going to win it, but if my team couldn't win it, I'd love to see Aston Villa win it. Not only just because it's someone different, not only because it's a team that has done things in a right way to an extent, and the beautiful way of doing it, and the brilliant way that Unai Emery's took to his task at Aston Villa, but just because it will annoy so many Arsenal fans even more so. And I would love every second of it, and it would be funny to me. Even though I do like Arsenal, even though I do like what Mikel Arteta's done, even though I have been a big advocate of Mikel Arteta and the way that he's gone about his business, and when many people were against him, I was someone that said, you need to give this guy patience because there will be good times ahead. I'd still love it if Aston Villa managed to get a trophy before Arsenal did, and a big one at that, and especially a league title as well. That would be incredible. But I don't think it will happen necessarily. I think Aston Villa have still got a long way to go, and there's a lot to worry about for Arsenal if Aston Villa later on down the line. But that is the case. That is there. We'll obviously wait and see what happens with Aston Villa down the line. Now we come to two teams that are in the mud, Chelsea and Manchester United. Chelsea lost 2-0 to Everton this weekend. Manchester United lost 3-0 to Bournemouth this weekend. What to say about these two teams? United, to say they're still sixth is mad to me, but they are. They obviously beat Chelsea midweek. They were hoping that, it's Bournemouth. We're going to beat Bournemouth because they're, Bournemouth. But as I keep saying time and time again this season, Bournemouth plays some very good football. They just struggle sometimes to put the ball into the back of the net, even though Dominic Solanke is having a very good season, to say the least. And he was once again on the score sheet very early on in this game. They do concede some stupid goals. Fortunately for them, they were coming against a United side that only score stupid goals. So the recipe was there for disaster for Bournemouth, right? Wrong. because Bournemouth, right out the gates fast, opening 5 minutes, Dominic Solanke scores. And then from there, United do have a couple of opportunities. Harry Maguire sees his effort tipped over the bar. A couple of more opportunities by United, but ultimately they couldn't make their chances pay. And Bournemouth went on to punish United with 2 headed goals in the second half. Incredible stuff by Bournemouth. Fantastic by Bournemouth. I'm starting to doubt my prediction of them going down this season. I didn't think they'd have enough about them, but they're actually putting together a bit of a good run right now. I think they're unbeaten in their last 4 or 5, and I think they've actually made it 3 wins on the bounce, I want to say 3 wins on the bounce. I could be wrong. I could be very wrong. Oh, it is 3 games unbeaten. 2 wins on the bounce, 3 games unbeaten. 4 games, whatever. But yeah, Bournemouth doing extremely well right now, and they were absolutely deserving of everything that they got on Saturday afternoon. For Manchester United, there's no heart, there's no work rate, there's no desire. Bruno Fernandes picked up another yellow card, and it's funny that people are like, well, he didn't want to play against Liverpool next week because he knew what was coming, so he decided to get himself suspended for that game. Fair enough. Whether or not that is the case or not, obviously we'll never really know. But no, it's worrying. And it's a massive week for United. As I've mentioned before, their Champions League campaign hangs by a thread, and there's no even guarantee that they'll get into the Europa League place. Because obviously, if they lose to Bayern Munich, that's it. They need to win to at least guarantee themselves in the Europa League. And then depending on what happens between Copenhagen and Galatasaray will determine whether or not they're going to be in the Champions League or whether they're going to be in the Europa League come February when, of course, the competitions in Europe resume again. It's a massive, massive week for them because then afterwards they face Liverpool. As I mentioned before, they face Liverpool on Sunday, and it's at Anfield. Yes, it is at Anfield, and we know that obviously even during Sir Alex Ferguson, the Sir Alex Ferguson era, Anfield was never an easy place to go. Sure, there may have been 1 or 2 results that have gone heavily in Manchester United's favour, but even the worst Liverpool sides and much worse Liverpool sides have actually gone to Manchester United and actually won, whether it be home or away. Like Liverpool is always going to be a tough opposition for them. In this scenario, though, United are extremely poor. United are terrible. And I know I'm setting it up for the footballing gods to bite me in the arse, but like I cannot see a world in which United not only... Like, I could see them getting a result against Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich have already qualified. Maybe they take it easy. Maybe they've got... I know they were absolutely hammered this past weekend in the Bundesliga, 5-1 by Frankfurt. So the possibility of United turning up for a one-off game, winning that one-off game, and maybe securing themselves a place in the Champions League knockout stages may actually work. As hard as that may be to believe, because Bayern Munich in the knockout stages are often passing their group with flying colours. Against Liverpool, though, again, in a one-off game, maybe. You never really know with the Premier League. I wasn't expecting like Sheffield United to win this weekend, but they did against Brentford. I wasn't expecting Burnley to pick up anything against Brighton, but they did. I wasn't expecting United to lose in the way that they did. I didn't know what to expect in the Chelsea-Everton game. But yeah, it's madness, isn't it? It's madness that doubt starts to creep in and you never know what might happen. But United are going to be without Bruno Fernandes next week. It's going to be interesting to see how they line up, what they do to try and combat a Liverpool side that ultimately, if they're given a sniff next week, is going to rip them apart. You know, the Anfield crowd are going to be on it right from the start to the finish. You know that obviously Liverpool are going to want to smell blood and go in for the kill very early on, particularly when they're at home. And especially with the past few results being so heavily in Liverpool's favour, whether it be home or away, to be honest, with maybe one or two exceptions. You just know that United are going to be fearing that game. Now, as we've seen time and time again this season, especially and in previous seasons, often it's never a foregone conclusion. And sometimes when you really think that the favourite is going to absolutely wipe the floor with the underdog in this situation, it never normally pans out that way. I'll give you a few examples. Liverpool didn't wipe the floor with Luton. They drew 1-1. Manchester City did not wipe the floor with Tottenham in the way that we expected. They drew 3-3. Chelsea drew 4-4 with Manchester City earlier on in the season as well. So there have been a few times where the underdog has sort of surprised us a little bit. And, you know, it is worth considering, because if Liverpool take their eyes off the prize, if Liverpool go into that game thinking the game is already won before kickoff, they become complacent. They overcompensate for it, and that's when they drop points. And that's my biggest fear going into that game on Sunday. I'm really hoping we actually don't do that and we actually go in there and we get the job done in a professional manner, score plenty of goals in the process, really dig it in on those Manchester United players and fans and everybody else to, again, another 7-0 would not be a miss. Like, I would love another 7-0. But like I say, for Manchester United, it's a massive week for them. It's probably a week that United fans have been dreading. I just hope that Liverpool can live up to that expectation and absolutely hammer them into the ground. By any means necessary. By any means necessary. So we'll wait and see on that one. It's probably going to be the one game of the season that United turn up for. But we'll see, obviously, what happens, and we'll get more into that later on in the week. What we're going to talk about next? Chelsea, of course. Chelsea. Chelsea lost 2-0. Lost 2-0 to Everton. Big result for Everton. Another win for them. 3 wins on the bounce now. I think 4 or 5 games unbeaten for the Toffees. I think, off the top of my head. Actually, no, they lost to Man United. It will be 3. Will be 3 or maybe 4 at most. Everton, madness, man. Madness. They've already pulled back 9 of the 10 points that they had lost from obviously doing that 10-point deduction. They leap out of the relegation zone into 17th. And if they hadn't have had that 10-point deduction, they would be currently sat in 10th place. That is how much that 10-point gap has really heavily influenced the Premier League when it comes to Everton. They would be sat in 10th right now. They would be mid-table. Sean Dyche is doing an incredible job with Everton. And I never thought I'd say that. completely. I thought like it would be a bit hit and miss and inconsistent, but I thought they'd have enough about them to obviously see out any Premier League relegation. The siege mentality seems to be settling in. The difficult nature of a Sean Dyche side seems to be heading up to the surface, and Chelsea found out that the hard way. Losing once again, Chelsea didn't take their chances, and ultimately their defending was poor. Reece James pulled out with another hamstring injury. Jesus Christ, that man's legs are made of Weetabix. That man's legs is made out of Weetabix, and I don't know I don't know how many chances you give this guy. I really don't know how many chances you give this guy with how many games he misses due to injury. It's madness to me. It's an absolute madness to me that this guy cannot go more than 3 or 4 games without pulling out with some sort of hamstring injury. How many chances do you give him, Chelsea fans? Seriously. I know he's a talent. I know he's a wonderful player. I know he's a brilliant defender. But there comes a time where availability creeps into how good you are. How reliable are you to be playing the majority of your games? He's your captain, and he spends more time in the medical room than he does on the pitch. How long do you give this guy? I have it at my club as well. Thiago Alcantara, phenomenal player. An absolutely phenomenal player. Incredible player. I love Thiago. I love watching him. He's so graceful, so elegant on the ball. A beautiful player. One of the best players I've seen in my lifetime. To name one of absolutely many, many, many players. But he's never there on the pitch. He's never there on the pitch when it matters most. And Reece James is the same, because you may get him for like 2 or 3 games here and there across a season before he's out for another few months. And you get him for another 2 or 3 games. And he accumulates like 15 games maybe in all competitions that season, or 20 in all competitions, or whatever the case may be. But if he's not on the pitch, what's the point in keeping him? What's the point? It's bad, and it only added to how poor, to how poor Chelsea were. Like I say, the defending for the goals was poor. Decore scored a very well taken, very well composed and controlled goal. Dobbin, is it named Dobbin? Dobby from Harry Potter. Dobbin. He scored the second goal for Everton. Again, another great control finish. Chelsea just poor, man. Chelsea are just extremely poor, and in a week in which they've obviously got slapped up by Man United, the scoreline somewhat flattered Chelsea a little bit, because if United had their shooting boots on, it would have been a lot more. And then to obviously go on a few days later and lose to Everton, bad times are ahead, man. Bad times are ahead. I'm just going to have a look at Chelsea's next run of games here. Sheffield United on Saturday. Well, Chris Wilder gave Liverpool a run for their money, and then, of course, got a big result against Brentford this weekend. So that's not going to be an easy game, to say the least. And you feel like a loss there. You don't want to know what may happen with the Chelsea fan base in that one. A week tomorrow, they're in Carabao Cup action against Newcastle. That's going to be a very interesting game. A Newcastle side that are very hit and miss this season. Away form, not that great. And we'll talk about Tottenham and Newcastle a little bit later on in regards to that. Then they've got Wolves at Molineux. That's going to be an extremely tough game. Wolves are no pushovers on Christmas Eve. So that's going to be tough for Chelsea to contend with. And then 27th, they've got Crystal Palace at home. Again, potentially another tough game, and obviously depending on the managerial situation, if that continues to get any worse, we'll see what happens there. And then they've got Luton Town away from home on the 30th of December. And that's not going to be easy. Luton have given some really tough games to teams at home. So that's not going to be... So it's not an easy running, to say the least. And it's very difficult to see where Chelsea will pick up points. I know Chelsea have picked up some points in games you wouldn't expect them to, or whatever the case may be. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens with Chelsea going forward. But they are well and truly in the mud with what's happened this past week. It wouldn't honestly surprise me if they go on a bit of a run of winning games. Ultimately, it wouldn't surprise me if they went on a run of losing games. It wouldn't surprise me if they went on a run of drawing games. I don't think there's anything that this Chelsea side can do this season that wouldn't surprise me going forward. But Everton were well worthy of the 3 points. They're well worthy of the win. Congratulations to them. Big job being done by Sean Dyche at Goodison Park right now. Clawed back 9 of the 10 points that they dropped from that points deduction. Fantastic effort by Everton. Fantastic job by Sean Dyche. And we'll see if that continues. We'll see what happens going forward. All I've got to say to Chelsea, and in particular the likes of Romeo Lavia and Moises Caicedo, is your wallet may be good, but wouldn't you like to be with Liverpool top of the table right now? Look, again, I'll reiterate my point. I don't think Liverpool are going to win the title this season, but at the same time, enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. No, I think in the long run, Chelsea will be fine, but that's in the very, 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 very long run, rather than any sort of short-term business. So we shall see what happens with those two teams going forward. Next up, we're going to talk about Manchester City came back to winning ways against Luton. Big 2-1 win for City there. Luton Town took the lead just before half-time, 1-0, and I was thinking, could there be another shock on the cards at Kenilworth Road here? But then City fought back, 2 goals in quick succession. Bernardo Silva and Jack Grealish both getting on the score sheet. Big win for City there, a much needed win for City overall, because obviously they were going into this game 4 games without a win. They weren't great City, but they got the job done nonetheless. And I think they needed that kind of result to obviously get things back up and running again. And the only other downside to City winning, well, from a City point of view, the only downside to their win was obviously the fact that Liverpool won, Aston Villa won. Obviously, there was always going to be a dropping of points between one of Aston Villa and Arsenal. So they got Arsenal dropping points, which was an okay thing. But of course, Tottenham are still hot on their heels with a win that they picked up in a 4-1 victory over Newcastle. A game that I said could go any which way. I didn't actually notice Newcastle's poor away form until someone pointed it out to me just as the game was about to kick off. So, yeah, I was actually pretty surprised at the away form of Newcastle, but their away form actually wasn't that good. Tottenham took advantage, and you know it's bad. You know it's bad when Richarlison scores against you. But you know it's even worse when Richarlison scores 2 against you. No. Tottenham get the ball up and running. Udogie with the opening goal. Probably been the best left back in the league so far this season, Udogie. I've been very impressed with the way that Postecoglou's used him and the way that he's looking. He's looking very impressive. Rightfully and deservedly probably got a goal to show for his efforts. So very good on his part. Richarlison then scores a tap in from Son Heung-min, absolutely tying up Kieran Trippier on that left-hand side / right-hand side of Newcastle's. Tap in, ties him all up, pulls the ball back, tap in for Richarlison. Right place at the right time. Fortunately, didn't scuff it for him. Yeah, I don't like... If you haven't guessed already, I don't really rate Richarlison at all. But yeah, he got a brace, and that's decent enough, I guess. Whatever. Richarlison scores in the second half as well. Somewhat fortunate. He takes a really shocking touch, but because Lascelles is Lascelles, and because the Newcastle goalkeeper is, well, Dubravka, he gets away with it a little bit and manages to find the back of the net. It was a well-taken goal in the end. The finish was nice, but yeah. Against anybody else, I don't necessarily think he's getting that kind of freedom in the penalty area, especially when he takes a bit of a dodgy touch the way that he did. So I don't want to take it. I don't want to sound like I've got an agenda completely against him, but the guy is weird and the guy is not very good. That's my take away from it, and that's what I've always maintained and I've always been consistent with. But yeah, he very well taken a couple of goals. I guess he was a bit annoyed that he couldn't stay on the pitch long enough for the penalty decision to go in Tottenham's favour, because they actually picked up a penalty and Son Heung-min converted from the spot. I'm pretty sure that there would have been an interesting discussion between himself and Son if obviously they were both on the pitch at the time. Son converted the penalty, got his goal before Newcastle got a consolation goal in injury time through Joe Linton, finding the back of the net for Newcastle. Massive result for Spurs. They needed to get back to winning ways, and they did so in that game. Massive win for them. Needed to steady the ship somewhat after, of course, what had been 4 or 5 games without a win. It's also decent that they actually took the lead first and managed to stay there. But yeah, it's a big result for Spurs, and it shows that they actually finally took their chances. And I think pulling Son out to the wing benefited Spurs. I felt like him being in a bit more... I'm not saying it wasn't wrong to put him through the middle, but I think in this particular game, he absolutely had Kieran Trippier on toast. So I think it was a stroke of genius by Postecoglou to revert Son back to his more wing position that we've seen him accustomed to in the past number of years that he's been at the club. But it is good that they have that within their arsenal, and Tottenham can obviously use that to their advantage. Son through the middle is not going to be a bad thing. Son through the middle will terrify defenses, as always. But occasionally pulling Son out to the left to kind of stretch the play and kind of give them a bit more of a dimension on the wing will obviously be a benefactory or a benefit to Spurs having that kind of versatility going forward. Richarlison back amongst the goals. Does that necessarily mean his confidence is going to be back? Maybe. We'll obviously see what happens with Richarlison going forward. I still don't rate him as a player, still don't rate him as a footballer, but there you have it. He's got 2 goals on the day. Udogie, like I say, has been brilliant all season, in my opinion. One of the more consistent performers. I know that he's a bit rash at times, and I know that maybe sometimes he's been a bit fortunate to get away with certain bookings and red cards, but I personally think he's been brilliant all season. And yeah, Tottenham controlled the chaos. And I made a video on that Saturday afternoon in saying that Tottenham need to learn to control the chaos that they possess. And I think that they did that in this game. Yes, they were a little fortunate. Newcastle did have their opportunities to score and they missed them. But at the same time, Tottenham were a bit more reserved, a bit more in control, not necessarily letting the chaos get the better of them. And fair play to Tottenham for getting back to winning ways. Again, the only downside for Spurs this weekend was the fact that all the teams above them, barring, of course, Arsenal, picked up points and they weren't able to really benefit from this win in terms of a points tally sort of situation. But at the same time, it was a big win for Spurs. And I'm just going to go and see who Spurs have next, because I don't remember off the top of my head. And I feel like it is Forest. It is Forest. So again, it's another favourable fixture for Tottenham against Nottingham Forest. They've of course got their own problems with Steve Cooper and everything, and they've got their own bad run of form that they're currently going through right now. But at the same time, yeah, big win for big win for Tottenham. Controlled the chaos. I like it. We'll see, obviously, if that continues going forward or whether the inconsistencies are going to show once again in Spurs going forward. But it's 3 points at the end of the day, and it's a much-needed 3 points because things were starting to get a bit ropey and a bit scary. And, of course, again, it's this thing of this side is breeding through confidence of playing a more attractive and more attacking and more front foot style of football, which I 100% understand and get, by the way. I get that. But the more that these kind of things happen where Tottenham took the lead and then they weren't winning games and they couldn't finish off their opposition and they were losing points, there's only so far that confidence will get you before those kinds of results and those kinds of things get the better of you. So this was a much-needed win for Spurs. They got it against a tough Newcastle side. I know both of these sides come into this one as like the injury classico, I guess you could say, with both sides having so many injuries to each other's squads. So for Spurs, it's great. For Newcastle, back to the drawing board. They have these results in them, and it's particularly away from home that these results seem to strike. And it's not good. It's not good if you're Eddie Howe or for Newcastle. They've got a big week coming up, Champions League action, and then my memory is just completely gone today. I really cannot. I had this all sort of memory. Fulham on Saturday, and the weird thing is that Newcastle are at home, so it could be better for them. But at the same time, Fulham have found a patch of form, and they've found a good goal-scoring touch up front. That could be a difficult game for Eddie Howe's side, and maybe then the pressure will intensify on both manager, players. I know that they've had their issues this season, but there was always rumblings from a few weeks ago of maybe Eddie Howe's job isn't as safe as what many people think. So it is going to be very interesting to see what happens going forward with Newcastle. Massive week coming up, massive festive period coming up. And it's going to be interesting to see where Newcastle's future may lie in the Premier League table. Fulham, we'll just touch on Fulham. 5-0 winners against West Ham, a West Ham side that had a few key players missing because of a seemingly sickness bug, I think, according to David Ornstein. But nonetheless, Fulham got the job done. They found an incredible patch of goal-scoring form right now. I think they've got 16 goals in their past 4 games? That's incredible. A Fulham side that, to my knowledge, were not that good at scoring in front of goal. Suddenly, they get 16 goals out of the last 4 games from out of nowhere, and they're looking very good, to say the least. They're actually picking up some good performances, some good results. Raul Jimenez is back amongst the goals. Seemingly found his goal-scoring touch. But it's not just him as well. Harry Wilson's playing very well. Willian even scored on Sunday. And the best part about it is that there's 5 different goal scorers for Fulham in their game. I just want to see if there was 5 different goal scorers in their 5-0 win against Forest. Back-to-back 5-0 wins. Absolutely incredible. Oh, no. Iwobi got 2 and Jimenez got 2 on the game against them. But 5 different goal scorers for Fulham against West Ham. And 2 back-to-back 5-0 victories against both Forest and West Ham. Madness. Absolute madness. It's a big result. Big result for both of them. For both these teams, really. Big result for Fulham and the way that they move into the top half of the table. It's incredible what a couple of wins can do for you in this Premier League table, and the way that they've gone about their business, got their head down, seemingly rode out the sort of bad form. I don't exactly know what has exactly changed, other than the fact that they're starting to take their chances. But it's a massive result for Fulham. It's a heavy defeat by David Moyes' side, but that's kind of been the nature of West Ham's season. They suffer a bit of a big defeat, but then they bounce back, and the inconsistent season continues. We'll obviously have to wait and see what happens. There's no excuses for losing by 5-0, regardless of who you're playing or personnel-wise who you're playing, rather than team-wise who you're playing. But yeah, it's a big result for Fulham. Congratulations to them. 5-0, back-to-back 5-0 victories. If they can make it 3 back-to-back results of 5-0, that would be absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, at least we now know that Fulham can score plenty of goals. And obviously for them, they'll hope it continues. It'll be interesting to see if it does continue and whether the goal-scoring form of the likes of Raul Jimenez does continue as well. Moving on. Just run through these quickly because, I was out Saturday for a friend's birthday, so I didn't really get to see much of the football on Saturday, with the exception of 2 games. That was Liverpool Palace and, of course, Arsenal Aston Villa. Brentford losing to Sheffield United. Big win for Sheffield United. Massive 3 points. The first 3 points of the new reign of old manager Chris Wilder. They still are bottom of the table, Sheffield United, but only by goal difference after Burnley's 1-1 draw with Brighton. A big point to pick up for Burnley, actually. 1-1 with Brighton. That's no easy task to get something from the Seagulls, but Burnley managed to do so. A massive day for the bottom 2 clubs. They take advantage, of course, of Luton dropping points, but also Everton picked up a win as well. So that's not exactly great for either of them. Nottingham Forest drew 1-1 with Wolverhampton Wanderers. A big point for Steve Cooper's side. Stopped the rot a little bit that was happening at Nottingham Forest. Not great, though. There was obviously a lot of pressure on Steve Cooper going into that game, but he seems to have survived another week, barring any sort of sacking that's going to happen within the next few days or so. We'll wait and see on that one. But yeah, it does seem that it has managed to keep him in the job for at least another week. Like I say, it doesn't get any easier, though, because Nottingham Forest are going to be facing Tottenham in their next league game. So that's going to be very interesting. And that one could be the final nail in the Steve Cooper coffin should things not go to plan for Forest in that one. As for Wolves, again, it's probably a result that they've not taken properly. They probably should have done better in that regard. But at the same time, it's still a point. It's still another point to add to the collection and something big as far as what they're concerned. And I think that is all the games that were covered. We covered Crystal Palace, Liverpool. We covered Aston Villa, Arsenal. We covered all of the Saturday games and all the Sunday games. So yeah, we're through it. That was it. Big, like I say, big point for Forest. Stops the rot a little bit, and we'll obviously wait and see if they can obviously turn their fortunes around and what the case may be for Steve Cooper's side going forward. But yeah, at the end of match day 16, Liverpool are the new Premier League leaders. Manchester City and Tottenham get back to winning ways. Aston Villa maintain their impressive home form at the expense of now Arsenal, having beaten both Manchester City and Arsenal within the matter of days, and they are really pushing forward. Is a title challenge on the cards for Unai Emery's side? Only time will tell on that one. As obviously it's a weekend in which there was a big victory for Sheffield United at the bottom of the table. Burnley pick up a big point against Brighton. Manchester United and Chelsea are still in the mud after defeats to the likes of Bournemouth and Everton. Everton move out the relegation zone with that victory over Chelsea and claw back and have so far accumulated and clawed back 9 points of the 10 that they were deducted several weeks ago. Forest and their manager Steve Cooper survived for another week with a big point against Wolverhampton Wanderers. 1-1 it finished between Forest and Wolves there. Crystal Palace, like I say, lose to Liverpool. Brentford losing to Sheffield United. Fulham with a massive victory over West Ham, winning by 5-0 to move them into the top half of the table, leapfrogging the likes of Wolves, Chelsea, Brentford, and so on. And yeah, it's just another crazy week in the Premier League in which I would suspect that none of my predictions actually came true. I'm just trying to think. Did any of my predictions come true? None of the results, none of the goal scoring results were right, but I think I got like 2 right, and they were like the obvious ones, Liverpool and Luton, with all due respect. I think everyone else, I don't think I got a single one right in, whether it be result or the goal or how many goals to each side. So yeah, not a good week for me in terms of that, but we'll go on. We move on to this weekend. There is a Friday night game of Forest Tottenham, so I'll be back in a couple of days' time for Premier League predictions. So stick around for that video. There'll also be more content, of course, more videos, maybe more live streams as we get closer toward the halfway point of the season. And of course, the transfer window is very close to opening as well. So I'm imagining there's going to be a lot of movement in that transfer window, especially when you consider that teams are going to be looking to put their final preparations together for the second half of the season, whether they're battling relegation, whether they're challenging for Europe, or whether they're challenging for the league title. And of course, there's going to be the Euros to consider for a lot of these players, whether these players are getting game time or not, and they want to obviously put their best foot forward to be on that plane to Germany to obviously be a part of the European Championships that are coming up at the end of the season. So that's going to be big for them as well. We'll obviously wait and see what happens with all of that stuff going forward. But yes, the overall bottom line of this video is Villa are putting together a seemingly title challenge, it seems. Man United and Chelsea are firmly in the mud. Everton are out the relegation zone. Steve Cooper survives another week with Nottingham Forest, it seems. Man City and Tottenham are back to winning ways. And we have a new Premier League leader going into matchday 17 of this season in Liverpool Football Club. Those are in the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of all the things that I've talked about in this video, all of the makings of what was an incredible round of Premier League action this past weekend? I'd love to know your thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, in the comment section on this video. Would love to hear from you all. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new and want to see more content like this. Both things are always incredibly greatly appreciated. This has been an absolute ramble of a live stream. I do apologize. I've just sort of rambled and rambled and rambled. So I do apologize if it's been very difficult to follow and everything. I'll try and be a bit more organized and a bit more fluid next time, should we say, in terms of my rambling. But yeah, hit the like button on the way if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new and want to see more content like this. Both things are always very greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all for stopping by and watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks live stream. This has been a Premier League aftermath video, whatever you want to call it. And I will see and speak with you all again soon in another video or live stream or whatever it may be. Cheers, guys. Thanks, everyone, for stopping by the way that you did. Thanks, everyone, for getting involved. Thanks for your continued support. Take care. Have a good rest of your day. And I'll talk and speak to you again very, very soon. Peace out, people.